West Ham have given Manuel Pellegrini a vote of confidence, something of an unofficial vote of confidence. Don't believe the spin. I'm going to tell you why, but before I tell you why, you've got to realise what's supposed to be happening at this point. And it all centres around the board being able to take out £40 million out of West Ham United in about 2 months' time. Here's what's supposed to happen. This is what is supposed to be happening at West Ham now. West Ham are supposed to be in at least top 6. Haller's the top goal scorer in the league, that or thereabouts. Yarmolenko's come back from injury, he's doing really well. Paolo Fornals, the fornicators, fornicating everywhere. He's the best attacking midfielder in the league. Lanzini's back to full fitness. He's looking like Philippe Coutinho. He's dovetailing really well with Felipe Anderson. Rice is a year better. Fabianski's still the best goalkeeper in the league, and a defensive partnership between Balbuena and Issa Diop still goes from strength to strength. West Ham are riding high in the league. That's what's supposed to be happening right now. It's smoke and mirrors. Because whilst that's happening over here, the board can take out the 40 million quid in their loans, which they loaned the club. If they're doing that and we're in the top 6, we say, do you know what? It's fine. Don't worry. We're top 6. We've got the best striker in the league. The midfield is killing everyone. It's not a problem. Take your 40 million. Pellegrini's the best coach in the league. The players are brilliant. Not a problem at all. Some murmurs, some whispers, but the board get to take their money, take their 40 million, pat themselves on the back for a job well done. West Ham continue riding high. But of course, that's not what's happened at all. We find ourselves in a very, very difficult situation. Because of that, the board are going to be fuming, squirming, whatever it is. They are in a really difficult situation now about taking out that 40 million. Because where do we find ourselves now? Well, we find ourselves in a precarious-ish position in the league. All those things that are meant to be going well that I listed earlier on, they're not going well. Things are bad. Pellegrini's not the tactical magician that we thought he was. Haller's not the top scorer in the league. The old Lanzini's not back. Rice isn't a year better. It's a Diop and Balbuena partnership. Well, we might as well have nobody at centre-back at the moment because we are just shipping goals left, right and centre. Should have been 5 at half-time at Newcastle. Could have been 10. We're lucky they took their foot off the gas and thought 3 goals is enough. That's what happened in that game, by the way, rather than any upturn from us in the second half. And because all that is happening, when we get to January, there's going to be pressure to buy new players. That pressure's not quite on at the moment because we're obviously not in a transfer window. And there's a bit of pressure on Pellegrini at the moment. But that pressure will come. The questions will start to be asked. Who are we going to buy? How are we going to buy our way out of this mess? And that leaves the board in a very, very tricky situation. Because they have cut the transfer bill hugely. We discussed it yesterday. I mentioned it on the video. Carroll, Perez, Adrian. I'm missing a couple here, aren't I? Chicharito, Obiang, so on and so forth. We basically spent half as much in the new players as we recouped in terms of wages. Lots of wages saved. 20 odd million net spend. So the money is saved there. That's what they're doing. They're gathering it all together so they can take their loans out. Now, I don't blame them. I don't blame them for taking interest on their loans, by the way. You can only really blame them if you've bought into the narrative that they are fans of the club who are doing it for the love. If I win the Euro Millions and I take over West Ham, I'm not going to take a penny out. If you win the Euro Millions, you take over West Ham, you do it for love. You're West Ham fans. We're West Ham fans. That's just what happens. That's not what this situation and what this deal was ever about. The purchasing of the club, the very, very first news conference they ever did. Cast your mind back. Sullivan's there with his little claret jacket on. They talk about the love for West Ham. Of course they do. Naturally. I don't dispute for a second David Gold lived on Green Street. Lovely. You know, no, he's a West Ham fan. I get that. But that's not why this club was purchased. The very first press conference, they talk about the Olympic Stadium. It's a business model. That's what business people do. They buy things. And then you have what they call an exit strategy. We know what the exit strategy is. Get in the Olympic Stadium. A rich buyer comes in. They sell at a massive profit. I've discussed this all before. The difference between an entrepreneur who carries on going because they love the deal and somebody that's just happy plodding along in life. These are not plodders. These are wealthy, successful businessmen And their advisor is a wealthy, successful businesswoman. This is so they can take their... I don't blame them for taking their interest. But they've reminded us about that interest because the interest was, as they told us, a low amount. Both Sullivan and Gold have reminded us along the way that actually they could be earning more if that had been invested in property. Not my words, their words. That's what they've said. They say actually the return is quite low. If we were honestly people that were going to extract every last bit of profit from our money, we wouldn't have bought West Ham. That's what they say. They say if we'd have put that into offshore investments, we get more of a return back. And do you know what? On interest payments, yes, they're right. But not on the big deal. Not the big deal at the end. But as I say, I don't honestly have a massive problem with them earning interest off their loans. They don't take a wage. That's what they do, because I don't believe they're in it for the love. I believe they're in it for the profit. But what it does leave us in is a really, really tricky situation with what comes up in January. Because they are in a really awkward situation to take their money out now for the reasons that I detailed just before. And if we are still in this position, what about if they do decide not to take that money out? What if they decide to leave it, to defer the payment, the 40 million balance that they've left in the club, which they were going to take in January, which they still might take in January? What are they going to do if they defer that? Are they going to give it to Pellegrini to spend on the players? Because one thing we know about the board, they are reactive. They do not like the criticism. You saw what happened after Burnley, after the protests. You do have to almost kick them into action. They don't like to be unpopular. They want to be popular owners. Everybody wants to be popular. No one actually actively wants to be unpopular. What they want to do is be successful West Ham owners. Yes, they want to sell at the end. But they had a plan and they have a belief that what they're going to do gets us to top six. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. That's not what happened. Their plan has failed, largely. The move from Upton Park to the London Stadium, Olympic Stadium, whatever you want to call it, has largely failed. It's not a successful migration. We had Kieran Maguire on these very channels telling us he's a professor of economics, of football economics. We're not going to get any better than that. You're not really going to get anything more rubber stamped than that. He says it earns us £2 million more a year. So it wasn't about that. So you have to say that has been a failure. But I do believe that they wanted it to work out, and they probably believed it would work out, but it hasn't. It hasn't worked out at all. So you find yourself in a position now where they're going to feel awkward about taking that money out. Do they want... I'm not saying there's going to be riots or demonstrations or anything like that, but do they want the fury of the fans? And in which case, if they feel that they can't take their £40 million out because of the way the team is performing and because they don't think they're getting enough bang for their buck out of Pellegrini. Basically, Pellegrini is not doing what he was hired to do on a massive wages. Then the pressure turns on to Pellegrini, which is really what all this is about. Because, as I said at the start of the video, they've given a little vote of confidence. It says on Claret and Hugh, West Ham board are backing manager Pellegrini by providing a united front, confident that he and his squad will turn things around this season. I can't imagine how they would be. The rest of us are feeling uneasy. How can they be confident? What do they know that we don't? Well, they don't. So this is just a statement. They're trying to create a feel-good factor. They're backing him. And I understand that. I get that. I don't expect them to do anything different. It'd be wrong for them to undermine him at this stage. But reading between the lines, I don't believe it. Speaking exclusively to Claret and Hugh via a senior club inside, they told us this afternoon, we need to present a united front. The board believes in the manager and they believe the squad. They believe in the squad and they're confident they'll work hard and turn it around. While supporters' confidence is at an all-time low for the under-fire 66-year-old Chilean gaffer, after a run of no wins in 5 games, club insiders insist the board are entirely disinterested in cutting Pellegrini's contract short over the next 20 months left to run. The board want and are ready to show maximum faith in the manager by honouring his contract and not criticising the recent downturn in form, because they fully expect him and the squad to turn it around again. It's the same thing. It's not true. It's not true. They're going to be really worried. They're not going to be confident in any way, shape or form. And I'm just going to go to a separate article, which is Board worry over signings. West Ham's board, whilst having no intention of firing Manuel Pellegrini, remain extremely worried over one of his signings in particular. Guardian journalist Jacob Steinberg, after confirming the no-sacking decision by the board, added in a tweet that unsurprisingly there are concerns over tactics and signings. There's a key little phrase in there, just in case you missed it. Guardian journalist Jacob Steinberg, after confirming the no-sacking decision on the board. What that means is Claret and Hugh have spoken to the board, and Jacob Steinberg have spoken to the board, and Claret and Hugh and Jacob Steinberg have spoken to each other, and they've both received the same news. So it's being leaked. It's being leaked. We're standing by Pellegrini. That's the news. That's the news they want us to hear. The article goes on to say any major worry among the signings is that Paulo Fornals has shown absolutely no form whatsoever since his arrival at a club fee for 25. They're worried about Fornals, and particularly bearing in mind the value. The manager's mantra is that the Spanish under-21 international needs time to adjust to the pace of the Premier League. They think that's wearing thin, basically, that excuse, that mantra, as they called it. 23-year-old almost looks like he's a backup winger rather than an attacking midfielder, whilst at the same time goalkeeper Roberto has disappointed and striker Albion Ajeti doesn't appear anywhere near ready for life in the Premier League at this stage. With 8 tough fixtures in front of us, everybody simply has to have their fingers crossed that the manager can find a key to unlocking potential in Fornals in particular. A top source told us by email, sorry, I should just cut to this, I haven't read this, but yeah, there have been some disappointments in Fornals in particular. It costs a lot of money, so all we can do is hope and pray that he comes good very quickly. But sacking the manager was out of the question, so there you go again. Reaffirmed that there will be no sacking of the manager. But just to go full circle, and before I wrap up, the very fact that they're unhappy with the signing of Fornals does not bode well for any investment in January. Regardless of whether they defer the 40 million payment or they just make another 20 million available to the manager. Bearing in mind what's happened with Fornals, bearing in mind what's happened with Ajeti, bearing in mind what's happened with Roberto, bearing in mind we find ourselves in a precarious position, here's the question: would you, or would they, more pertinently, give Manuel Pellegrini another 20 to 30 million pounds in January to spend? It literally does leave more questions than answers.